It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, we have a special guest in studio as we break down Week 15 action in the National Football League, along with breaking news, headlines, and so much more. A special final edition of Fantasy Football Files, as always, with Jason Kamlowski. Rounding out the show, we have some golf conversation and so much more. Make sure you stay tuned for this one.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Welcome back. It's another edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. If you're new to the show, I'm your host, Josh Kirby, and I want to welcome you to an exciting episode today. We have a full slate ahead of us. But before we begin, we're part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network. You can find them on Twitter and Instagram, along with all streaming platforms. We're proud to be sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. We're also sponsored by PM Plus Reserves. Before we begin, I want to give thanks, as always, to JR Beats Official, Dave Johnson, and MPT Now Productions. Once again, welcome back. We have a very special guest in studio. I think this is the first time since the new studio opened that I actually had a guest on. Jonah Pearson, you've heard from him before talking golf, anything and everything. He was psyched to get on, so we have him right across the way from us. What's going on, buddy?
I am doing very well. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yes, sir. Very exciting week. I think you want to start with NFL Week 15 as much as I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this last week on the late episode I produced when I was sick, but Lamar Jackson and the Ravens over the Jets. Lamar Jackson has just been tearing up every game. He's an animal. And if you didn't tune in last week, he rushed for 86 yards. He passed Michael Vick in that game, breaking a record. Michael Vick gave high praise to Lamar, and he threw for over 200 yards and had 5 touchdowns in that game. Lamar Jackson is the front runner for MVP, in my opinion.
And I think rightfully so. I mean, he's unbelievable in the air. He's unbelievable on the ground. He has quality wins. I mean, there's no real dominant team in the NFL right now. I would say the Ravens are kind of the number one team. It's pretty widely agreed upon. But the wins that they have, I mean, even this game against the Jets, it's the Jets. But you beat anyone by 21 points. I mean, that's a good game. And Baltimore's defense is nothing to write home about. They're not spectacular. I don't think that they're like something super special, but when you have a quarterback as elusive and as electric as Lamar Jackson, I mean, they're my favorites for the Super Bowl. I like seeing it. I like Lamar Jackson. I think he carries himself well. I mean, he's doing this in his second year in the league. It's pretty unbelievable. I'm excited for him. And I'm looking forward to the playoffs because I want to see this actually put in action when it really counts. And for the NFL, that's in the postseason. These 12 wins in the regular season in the fashion he's done it is great, but I would like to see them, just destroy people in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I want to see their postseason form to see if they can keep this up. In the postseason, stuff changes. There are closer games. It's more tight because you're in the race for the Super Bowl. But still, I want to see how Lamar handles being in the playoffs and if they can do better than their wild card exit last year, I believe. Right. So, Lamar, hands down, he's incredible. I think for sure he's going to get MVP. And, if it's not him, I'm not really sure who it will be. So.
Yeah, I know I've heard talk of Russell Wilson, and I think there's definitely an argument for him.
Yeah.
But when you talk about someone who's the most valuable player, I think Lamar Jackson has completely electrified the Ravens organization. I mean, the Seahawks have been good. They are good every year. They're a playoff contender. They're at least in the hunt every year. Russell Wilson is great, absolutely. But in terms of changing the NFL and having to game plan to play Lamar Jackson, he's got to be hands down the MVP.
Yeah.
As in the title, most valuable player, he's completely turned around that organization. And, I can't imagine he doesn't win it.
Yeah, the Ravens right now are at 12-2, looking strong. Moving on to the Sunday slate of games, we'll talk about the Seahawks and Panthers. The Seahawks bounce back after a disappointing, I want to say, loss against the Rams on Sunday night. Like that game was a game I was like, man, Russell Wilson could have done so much more, but the Rams defense just got to him over and over and over again. But Russell Wilson bounces back, 286 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Chris Carson over 133 yards in the 30-24 win over the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, Chris Carson was electric, and even though this was a 6-point victory over the relatively dysfunctional Panthers, I think it was huge, obviously, with the 49ers loss on Sunday as well, for them to regain control of that division like that. And, going forward, I think they needed this win after that loss to the Rams. Not only did they lose to the Rams, but they looked terrible. So I think it was a good bounce-back victory. It'll be interesting to see going into the postseason. I don't know if mathematically they've clinched. They may have by now, but you got to think that they're a lock-in at this point. And so, Russell Wilson, he gets it done in the postseason, so we'll see if they can make a run. In my mind, the NFC is wide open. I really could see any number of teams, like 6 or 7 teams, potentially coming out of the NFC and going to the Super Bowl. So if Russell Wilson gets hot, and the Seahawks are able to avoid looking like they did last week against the Rams, I could see the Seahawks coming out of the NFC. It's getting at that point in the year, though, where it's kind of like we can tell who's going to be in and we can tell who's going to have a shot. But it's interesting because in my mind, the NFC is wide open.
Yeah, and taking a look at the playoff picture here through Week 15, Seattle and Green Bay, with Seattle the number 1 seed, Green Bay the number 2 seed. The Vikings number 6 in the wild card, the Saints number 3 in the wild card. San Francisco number 5 in the wild card, and Dallas number 4 in the wild card. We'll talk about Dallas and the NFC East later. For the AFC, it's the Ravens number 1, the Patriots number 2. I love to see that. The Steelers number 6 against the number 3 Kansas City. Buffalo number 5 seed in the wild card, and Houston number 4 seed. So that just a sort of what we think it's going to be like. It could change. You never know, because we have 2 more weeks of football. You never know what's going to happen. So
absolutely. And just to back up on the Seahawks real quick, right now they have the division lead. They're tied 11-3 with the 49ers, but with 2 weeks left, I think it's going to be crucial for Seattle to win enough that they can keep home field advantage, because, whoever does not win that division is basically going to have to play a wild card game, and they're going to be on the road. But potentially, if they win the division, they'll probably be the number 1 seed. So they're going to have home field all the way through the playoffs. I think that's going to be huge for Seattle and for the 49ers. So even though both those teams have mathematically clinched, there's still a lot on the line, and they're going to be playing for something for sure, because they're essentially playing for a first-round bye. That's almost a guaranteed 1 seed.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think that Seattle, with that whole 13th man atmosphere of what they have there, that's going to be huge if they can keep home field advantage through the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, we have New England beating Cincinnati 34-13. Tampa Bay beating Detroit 38-17. The Packers, almost that close to losing that football game, doing the laterals on the last play of the game, but they come away with a 21-13 win against the Bears in a game the Packers really needed to look strong in after last week not playing too well against Washington. The Packers still looking good. As I said, they're the number 2 seed in the NFC. So I'm interested to see Jonah, because last week Aaron Rodgers' performance against Washington was it could have been better.
Sure.
Because it was the Redskins. But the Packers, I'm thinking there's some sort of regression going on towards the end of the season, but I don't think it's going to change anything. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to rev right back up into high gear when the playoffs start.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. Whether he is coming out of the regular season 10-6 or he's coming out 15-1, nobody wants to play Aaron Rodgers in the postseason. This was definitely a statement win. Anytime, take the records out of it. I know the Bears are not great. They were still in the hunt coming into this week, but they're not a great team. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky has had question marks ever since he's been there. Take all that out of it, though. Whenever the Bears come to Lambeau, it's going to be a good game. So this was still a statement win for them. I mean, Aaron Rodgers didn't play fantastic. He looked fine. Threw 16 for 33. That's a little less than 50% of his passes. That's not great. He had a touchdown, but with all that being said, he's going to get into the playoffs, and he's going to be good. Nobody wants to play him in the playoffs. So even though, this was a statement win, I think it means more in terms of the franchise for the Bears, because this loss just proved, to me, at least in my mind, they are not going to get it done with Mitch. Time and time again, they keep thinking this is going to be it. He's going to get over the hump. Their defense is there. They have a very strong defense, one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
They look like the Bears of old. But it's the same old thing. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a guy that can get it done. And it's like they're always in the hunt graphic. They're about to get in, and Mitch just couldn't get it done again on Sunday, and now they're done. I mean, it's just tough. It's like they're going to have to draft a quarterback eventually, but that defense is so strong, it just kind of seems like they're never going to get it all together. So we'll see. I don't know what's next for Trubisky. I can't imagine he signs another contract with the Bears, but I mean, you never know. We've seen more dysfunction, even right here at home in Washington. So I don't know.
I knew you were going to bring that up. Moving right in, Washington falls short to Philly. Dwayne Haskins shined a glimmer of hope. I'm not sure how much I'm going to take that well, but 261 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. The Redskins looked really good, but Carson Wentz just produced a game-winning drive.
Yeah, Carson Wentz looked good for sure. I mean, this was a game that I was really rooting hard for the Redskins.
Yeah, but the Eagles, they weren't taking care of the ball.
No,
every time Carson Wentz got touched, it felt like the ball was popping out.
Yeah, they didn't protect him as well as they probably should have, as well as a playoff team should. I mean, I love the dysfunction of the NFC East so much. I wanted the Redskins to win this game because I'm still looking for that 7-9 division winner. I don't know if that's still on the table mathematically. I know at one point it was. I don't even care if it's the Cowboys or the Eagles. I just want to see a 7-9 division winner because I think it's hilarious. So I was rooting for the Redskins here. But, I mean, it's so Washington. It's so Washington for the end of the season for them with a new quarterback and an old washed-up running back to lose to the Eagles at home like that. I don't know what's going to happen in the NFC East. Carson Wentz looks good. You would think that he's able to put together a championship team. Yeah, here they are. They're 7-7.
And they lost to the Dolphins.
Right. With a brutal loss to the Dolphins. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to get in. I have a feeling that the Cowboys are going to come out of the division. But Carson Wentz, I really do think he's an elite player. He's an unbelievable talent. He took him to a Super Bowl a couple years ago. But, I mean, it was Nick Foles that got it done at the end of the day. So it's like, I don't know.
Nick Foles got it done twice.
Right. And there's still a question mark for Carson Wentz for me. I would like to see him come through. I think he's a great dude. I would like to see him succeed, but I'm going to need to see more quality wins over teams other than the Redskins, specifically in this postseason. So we'll see what happens.
The two games the Eagles and Redskins had were two very close games all around, but we'll get into more of the NFC East division later. Other scores: Kansas City routs Denver 23-3. Eli Manning, his second straight win coming off the bench for injured Daniel Jones in what could be his final home game in the Meadowlands. I'm not sure why it's a question, should Eli be in the Hall of Fame? It's not a question. Eli will be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not sure why people are questioning that just because he rode the bench, because he's old and he wasn't performing well enough for head coach Pat Shurmur, so he used Daniel Jones. But we see Eli Manning come into these two games against Philly and against Miami, and you see, man, Eli's looking pretty darn good. And you look here, Eli Manning throwing for 283 yards with 2 touchdowns, yet the Dolphins defense come away with 3 interceptions, but still, 283 yards isn't bad for Eli Manning. And another thing, he has won 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some of that Hall of Fame discussion surrounding him. I think that, 2 rings is tough to argue against. He got it done when it counted and that sort of thing. But, if you look at him as an overall player, if you take those rings out of it, I do kind of see the argument against it. He is the definition of an average player. I don't know what the stat was, but I think before he got benched for Daniel Jones, he was like something like, I don't know how many wins against losses. It was like 116 wins versus losses in games that he started, and then he's come back and he's won 1 and he's lost 1, and it's like it's hilarious. He lost to the Eagles last week in overtime, but then he beat the Dolphins again this week to get back to 500 for his career. And it's just, he is the definition of an average quarterback. But when you throw in his 2 rings, that's
in
a
the
Hall
legacy
of Fame career.
of his family.
Well, yes, and you're right, and there is obviously
that's got to play a role.
Sure, and it is.
Whether
probably.
we like it or not.
And it probably shouldn't, but I think you're right that it is. It shouldn't, but for the same reason that, ratings for the Patriots, it does better on TV than for the Chiefs, just because there's not as big of a fan base. It's good TV. It's
or
good
the Cowboys on America's Game of the Week.
Sure, exactly. It's good TV for Manning to get into the Hall of Fame. It's good publicity, so maybe it'll happen on that basis, but I hope not. I hope that he's looked at on his own for what he is. It is a relatively average career, but 2 rings, I'd have to agree with you. I think he does get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but as you said earlier, they did lose to Philly, but he put up a pretty great second quarter. New York couldn't score a point in the third or fourth quarter there. So
sure.
Houston improving to 9-5 with a very close game against Tennessee. As we see it here, Houston is the 4th seed after week 15. So they're still in a playoff spot. And
yeah, this was a huge win because Tennessee, in my mind, was one of the hottest teams in football going into this week. Ryan Tannehill has been on fire as of recent. I don't know how many wins they've had like in the last 6 or 7 weeks, but it seems like a lot. They were looking like they were going to come back and take control of this AFC South, and now it's kind of looking like it's Houston's division again. Tannehill was looking really good. He was looking like a franchise quarterback. Maybe they were going to tag him and keep him for a while. But taking this loss at home, a division opponent, right when it's coming down to the wire at the end of the season, that's tough. That's going to be tough to bounce back from. But, Deshaun Watson looked good. He had 2 picks, but he still looked pretty good. He got it done. So we'll see. I think that there's still a lot of movement to come in the next few weeks here, these last 2 weeks with this AFC South, and then with the Colts losing on Monday night, that doesn't help them. So now it kind of looks like it's going to be down to these two teams. And I believe, do they play each other again still?
Let me check.
They do. They play each other again week 17. So this was their first meeting of the year, which is weird. You got teams.
Yeah, there are a lot of teams who have 1 week you're playing a division opponent. Next week you're playing somebody else, and the week after you're right back playing the same team.
Right. Well, I mean, the Saints are going to have, or the Titans are going to have the Saints next week, and then I think Houston is going to have the Buccaneers. So you got to think that Houston's going to come out with a win. I think the Titans are going to end up needing a win. And if they can get it, then it's going to come down to that Week 17 matchup. So we'll see. I'm excited. I think that's going to be a great game to watch, Week 17.
Week 17 is the best time of the year, hands down.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's always fun.
There's going to be a lot of movement. I think that there's going to be a lot of teams battling for home field and that sort of thing, especially coming out of this AFC South. So we'll see. And I don't know if either of these teams can snag a wild card, but it's all going to come together. I think we'll know a lot more, especially after next week. But I think Houston looks good. I think that Houston always looks good in the regular season.
Yeah.
Just good enough to get in and win the division. Then they lose in the first round. So we'll see. I guess. I mean, I don't have.
It's always a home wild card game, and they get upset or something.
Exactly, and it feels that way for sure. Or in the next round. So we'll see what happens. I don't fully believe in the Texans, but maybe they'll get it done.
Yeah. More games from the 4:00 slate. Man, Cleveland sucks if Arizona can beat them 38-24.
Yes, they're terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's no excuse.
The record doesn't show how bad they really play against some teams.
Right, and I look at Cleveland this year in kind of the same light that I look at Atlanta. Atlanta has unbelievable talent. I mean, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Devontae Freeman. That alone, those playmakers. And then you got some guys on defense too. Trufant, Deion Jones. Those are big names. I mean, those are guys who can win you games. And the talent is there. So you got to look at the coaching. Why are we not winning 10, 11, 12 games a season? There's something going on with the schemes, something with having the locker room put together. I think there's a coaching problem in Atlanta, and I've thought that for a couple years now, ever since the collapse in the Super Bowl. And I think that I'm starting to look at Cleveland and think the same thing. I mean, obviously Cleveland's got issues, but Baker Mayfield, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, what's going on? I mean, why are we not getting 9, 10, 11 wins out of them? I mean, there's got to be a coaching problem. I'm not entirely convinced that Baker Mayfield is fully invested in Cleveland's organization. I mean, I think he wants to win. He's a competitor, but I also think he's kind of a putz, and I don't think that he wins games. So I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big fit from OBJ over the offseason and he demands a trade or something like that. I mean, I see a dark storm cloud over the Cleveland Browns organization in terms of the future because it's going to be a mess.
Well, I have heard, I haven't researched this much, that Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham do want out of Cleveland. But that, I haven't researched it, so I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not. I've just heard it. But that would really be a terrible blow to the Cleveland Browns and just turn their organization into a dumpster fire.
A complete failed experiment if that's what ends up happening. If both those guys leave, I mean, within the next year or two, it's a mess. They've always been a mess. I want to see them get it together. I was really looking forward to this season. I mean, because they were projected, like preseason projections, to win that division.
And where are they now?
And where are they now? I mean, they're going up against Lamar Jackson in that division. So that's kind of ridiculous. But I mean, Cleveland's a mess. Freddie Kitchens is a mess. He's got to go, and so we'll see. But I would not be surprised if the Cleveland Browns of the last 5 years are going to look shockingly similar to the Cleveland Browns of the next 5 years.
Yeah. So, you've talked about it. We can skip to your favorite game. The Falcons and Julio Jones dethrone the 49ers What a game it came down to. The last play of the game, and it comes down to a review, and Julio Jones makes the game-winning touchdown. But I'll let you speak on the Falcons in that game.
It was an unbelievable game. As a Falcons fan, it was great to see. Obviously, the season is a mess. We're not playoff contenders. There's a lot of question marks surrounding Dan Quinn and his head coaching position, but I think that the players were really playing for Dan Quinn. I think he's a player's coach. I think that they like him. I think that they want him there. I get the sense from just the general and how they handle post-game press conferences and things like that. I think that the players really do want Dan Quinn there, and I think that you could see that on Sunday. They're essentially playing for his job at this point. Arthur Blank has always been in support of Dan Quinn throughout all these losses and these tough seasons and stuff. But the talent is there, and it showed on Sunday, and it was exciting to dethrone the 2-loss 49ers on Sunday in that 4 o'clock slot. That was sweet. And to do it in San Francisco was sweet.
And watching it at B-Dubs was pretty sweet,
and we were
too.
watching at B-Dubs, and I was definitely the only Falcons fan there. But it was exciting. I love that.
There were two 49ers fans sitting in the bar with Garoppolo jerseys, and
I know.
And I was thinking to myself, oh, they're angry. Oh, they're angry. And we're over here just cheering.
Yeah, I was trying to just internalize how excited I was so that I didn't cause a scene. But yeah, it was sweet to see it come down to the finish and to see Matt Ryan finish that game like that. I mean, being down, I don't know what it was, 10 points with 3 minutes left or something.
Yeah.
To come back, score, put a stop on him, and go down and win it was exciting. And then even just the last second jumble around where we ended up scoring another touchdown. It was sweet.
Oh, yeah, Zacchaeus.
Right, Zacchaeus is second.
I saw that replay.
I think he got his first touchdown last week. And so now he has 2 straight games with 2 touchdowns, one of them in garbage time. But good for him. And, I mean, for Julio to score 2, that's sweet because he hasn't been in the end zone in like 9 weeks or something like that, like a longest no touchdown streak of his career or something like that. So for him to get in twice, and he was definitely in on that last play. There's no debate about it. I could tell. Yeah. I could even see it in those.
He crossed the plane.
Those 2 guys in B-Dubs, they knew it too. Both wearing the Garoppolo jerseys. They knew that thing crossed the goal line. I mean, I was watching their face. There's no doubt about it. And I even personally think that Hooper caught that ball on the play before, but he did bobble it after.
Yeah, he bobbled it. There was questions, but a win's a win.
Oh, a win is a win, and it was exciting. We just went a little further down the draft list, but we're going to get a slightly worse draft pick because of that game, but in my mind, it was worth it. It was awesome.
Yeah. Other games in the 4 o'clock slot. Oakland cannot seal the victory against Jacksonville in their final home game.
Final home game in the Black Hole. That was sad. I wanted to see that game in primetime too. We didn't get it, but yeah, that's just Oakland for you. It's tough to see them win their last home game like that in that stadium.
But no more Black Hole.
Yeah.
No more football on a baseball dirt.
I know.
Yeah. No more getting brown dirt on your Black Raiders jersey.
It's so kitschy and dumb, and I don't think it should have been happening in the first place. But now that it's like gone, I'm kind of gonna miss it. Yeah. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the new fans can paint their face up and be insane, just like the Oakland fans. But because I think that's one of the greatest things about Oakland is just their ridiculous fan base that comes out full face paint, shoulder pads, the full kit. I hope that they travel well and that sort of thing. But sad to see them lose their last game in Oakland. But they lost plenty. They lost plenty in Oakland, so it's kind of fitting.
Yep. Minnesota, my fantasy team got screwed because Dalvin Cook went out with injury after 27 yards on 9 carries. And Mike Boone, he looked just like Dalvin Cook, so I thought Dalvin Cook was still running. They both had dreads. But I found out later Dalvin Cook got hurt, and my fantasy team got screwed. But Vikings 10-4, they're looking pretty darn good. They're in the number 6 seed in the NFC wild card round. Kirk Cousins, he has these up games. He has these down games. 1 touchdown and 1 interception. 200 yards, which is good, but still, I think this was an average game for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, I think, they're a little bit of a wishy-washy team. Kirk has looked kind of all over the place in my mind. But I mean, Mike Boone stepping up the way that he did and filling that slot from Dalvin Cook, that was huge. I think it says a lot about him. He was waiting for his time, waiting to be that number one guy. I mean, and he had 56 yards and 2 touchdowns on 13 carries. He took over that game for them, and he sealed it. So I think that's huge going forward. I mean, they have a huge game against the Packers next week, that if the Packers slip up against the Lions in week 17 or something, and I think the Minnesota's going to have Chicago again in week 17. So if Minnesota can win out and the Packers slip up against the Lions or something, Minnesota could easily win this division and take home field. So that's going to be a huge game next week to look out for, of Vikings Packers, and we'll see if Mike Boone can step back up to the plate and get it done again. Because that's gonna be a tough rivalry match. I don't know if that's in Lambeau. Actually, I think it's in Minnesota on Monday night. So under the lights and the home crowd, it'll be interesting to see if Mike Boone can continue to run all over Green Bay.
Yeah. Other games action for you. Dallas stomps Los Angeles. Los Angeles, I'm not sure if they're going to make the playoffs after this. After the Rams, excuse me, I failed to alliterate that. But playoff hopes, I think they're in the hunt, but I believe they needed to win out, and they were unable to do that. Dallas at home on America's Game of the Week. Like you said, it's good TV. 44-21. And it comes down to what I want to talk about next. A very important 4 o'clock matchup next week between the Cowboys and the Eagles. A classic game to decide who wins the NFC
Just
East.
your classic 7-7 versus 7-7. Who's going to win the division?
No, I mean, not that. Just two division teams.
Two division teams,
especially the NFC East.
Right.
With good TV, the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's home or away.
It looks like it's going to be in Philly.
No. Yeah, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it was in Dallas. But anyways, America's Game of the Week. Great TV, like you said, and they're playing for a division, 2 NFC East rivals.
Yeah.
I can already hear Joe Buck screaming.
Yeah, he'll definitely be there. But I don't know if Dallas is going to get it done. I mean, Dak looked good on Sunday against the Rams. I mean, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, but I feel like he could so easily turn around in this game on Sunday in Philly and throw for 100 yards and 2 picks. I mean, he's been all over the place. I'm not sure if he's consistent enough to get it done in the postseason. Hopefully he can get him there, but honestly, the whole division's kind of a mess. I think that this game on Sunday could really go either way. It could fall towards the Eagles, and Wentz might look amazing, but also Dak might look amazing. I mean, both these guys are just relatively inconsistent, and they have been all year. So we'll see who brings it on Sunday. But for the Rams to do that on Sunday and lose to Dallas in such embarrassing fashion, honestly, to allow 44 points like that, it's not looking good. I mean, this was a team that was electric last year, and they were pretty much unstoppable on offense, and their defense was good enough it kept them in games. But I mean, they really didn't look like a playoff team on Sunday, so I don't think they will be.
Yeah, it's just going to be a fun game, no matter who wins, because the Redskins will not be playing for a NFC East championship. So
no, they won't. Moving
right along, Buffalo gets into the playoffs with a 17-10 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Devlin Hodges, 4 interceptions. He did not look like the same Ducky Hodges the past couple of weeks. Josh Allen, not a great game in terms of quarterbacks, only 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But in this sloppy, turnover-filled game, the Bills get it done, and they get a spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, Duck definitely didn't look like he had the last few weeks. I mean, 4 picks like that, it's tough to win a game if your guy's throwing 4 interceptions. I would actually be interested to see how many games have been won when you throw 4 interceptions, because I would say it's probably not even that many. But Buffalo looked good. I mean, good enough at least to win that game. I think it was a big statement win for them. They're pretty much locked into the playoffs at this point. They may mathematically actually be in, but the rest of the AFC, I mean, the battle for that last wild card spot, yeah, Buffalo has clinched, but the battle for that last wild card spot, I mean, it's pretty much Pittsburgh's to lose at this point. There's no one coming out of the AFC West. Tennessee's sitting there at 8-6 as well. This would have been a huge game for Pittsburgh to win, but they didn't get it done. So we'll see what happens. I think both these teams still make the playoffs. I think Pittsburgh still gets in because I think that Tennessee is going to end up losing to Houston in Week 17. But this was a big statement win for Buffalo, for Josh Allen. I think that moving forward, this is the kind of win in primetime like that Josh Allen's going to want to have under his belt when he goes into the postseason. But I think Buffalo is ready. I think they've been kind of flirting with being a playoff team for a couple of years now, and I think this is it. I mean, they're sitting here 10-4 with 2 weeks left. I think that this is the year that they need to get in there and try and make a run for the Super Bowl. But I think the entire city of Buffalo is behind Josh Allen, and they're ready to put all their chips into his hands. So we'll see what happens. But I think that Buffalo is a good team, and I could see them making a run in the playoffs, especially after this win on Sunday.
Yeah, after last time they were in the playoffs and like just getting upset, I feel like the Bills deserve to make a run in the playoffs, and I'd be excited to see it happen as well.
Absolutely.
Last but not least, Drew Brees passes Peyton Manning on a Monday night. I remember when Drew Brees broke another record on Monday night against the Redskins, and they stopped the game to bring his family out and everything against the Redskins.
It seems like he does that a lot. It seems like he breaks records in prime time on Monday night, like a lot.
They crushed the Colts 34-7.
They did. I mean, they were completely dominant the whole time. This was kind of the Colts' last chance to get it together, win a game that counts. And they couldn't get it done. But at the same time, the Colts essentially have like a get-out-of-jail-free pass for this entire season, having your franchise quarterback just retire out of nowhere right before the season. So
jail-free.
They have a pass for the entire year. They can always look back at this year and say, okay, but that's right after Andrew Luck retired. For them to still scrape the season they had, even though, I mean, they're sliding now. They're on 6 straight losses or something like that. But New Orleans looked good. I mean, you got to hand it to him. Drew Brees was being Drew Brees in full form the whole night. 307 and 4 touchdowns. He's unbelievable. For him to break that record, although Tom Brady's right on his heels, and it's almost going to come down to, for this season, who's going to last longer in the postseason. Is it going to be New England or is it going to be New Orleans? Because both those guys are just going to keep throwing touchdown passes, and they're going to keep passing each other. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. But for Drew Brees to also break the completion record and stuff like that, I mean, it's amazing. He was being himself in full form, and it was fun to watch. Even though the game was pretty much over once it started, it was still fun to watch.
Yeah. Drew Brees, he's going to continue to break records. I think he's going to continue to improve each and every year, and I don't think he's done yet.
Yeah, I don't think he is either.
Yeah, so that wraps up Week 15. Pretty good week. Week 16 is upon us, but before that, we have some more NFL news. Josh Gordon. I had a feeling this would happen. He got suspended again. PEDs, drugs. How many more chances is he going to get?
I'm hoping
if I was Goodell, he's done. He needs to take care of himself. He had his chance. Josh, it was great to see you. Take care. We love you.
Yeah. I mean, he had his chance, and then he had it again, and he had it again, and he had it again. I think that, I saw that the NFL has decided to suspend him indefinitely. I don't know if that's the first time that they've put that tag on it indefinitely rather than putting a timeline on it, like X number of games.
Just like Myles Garrett, indefinitely.
Yeah, right. And so I hope that indefinitely turns into just you're done forever. But we'll see. I mean, he is not mature enough. He can't handle it. I think that the NFL is making the right move here by just saying you're done and we'll let you know when you're not. I can't imagine after all of this. I can't imagine after getting through the Patriots organization, which, I mean, Belichick doesn't put up with anything, you know?
No. And the it was very weird because he was injured.
Right.
And due to some sort of rule with the IR, he was healthy and they had to release him. I'm not sure if there was a cover up there, but it was still pretty strange.
Yeah, and that whole thing was a little strange, and it makes you wonder if there was anything behind the scenes that was actually going on and they just didn't want him there. But I mean, the whole thing with Antonio Brown coming to New England and then them just immediately
I forgot
he's
he played
insane.
in New England.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a dream. It feels like a dream what happened the first 3 weeks of the season, everything with AB. But then now Josh Gordon coming in, still can't get his act together. I can't imagine that there's another GM in the NFL that's going to give him a chance. I personally hope
Robert
not.
Kraft's the highest of the high. If he doesn't like him, nobody else is going to take him.
Right, and I think you're exactly right. So I genuinely hope that this is the last we hear of Josh Gordon. But, at first I'm like, okay, there's probably a lot of guys in the league that are doing the same thing that he's doing. They're just not getting caught and that sort of thing. Give the kid another chance. Let him get right because he's an unbelievable talent. I mean, he is. He gets catches and he gets targets on whatever team he's on. But, I mean, I don't know how many times this has been now that I feel like I've seen the same tweet from Adam Schefter like 12 times. I know it's not that many, but I feel like it's that many. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I hope that this one's for good. I hope we don't hear from him again. Keep him out of the spotlight. Maybe he'll get right. But clearly just being an NFL player, having that much money, having that much control, he can't handle it. He just can't.
Yeah.
So
he needs to get help.
Right. And I think the GMs and coaches can say, we want to help him. We want him to get right. I think you can only say that so many times. I genuinely think the only way he's going to get right is if he gets out of the spotlight and he gets out of the league and he starts doing something a little more normal. Where he makes probably a lot less money.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wish the best for him, but I also hope that it's not the NFL. So.
Yeah. So, we're gonna take a quick break. A special final edition of Fantasy Football Files with Jason Kamlowski. When we return, Jonah bringing some President's Cup golf stats to the table. You're listening to the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. All right, you're probably wondering why I'm on Fantasy Football Files today. It's actually because we have Jason Kamlowski on the phone for this wonderful final edition of Fantasy Football Files. Jason, what's going on, man?
Nothing, man. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
Well, I'm just living the dream. Long day of work. Want to relax and do this podcast and have a great time. So, Jason, it's getting to the bare bones of the fantasy football season. The championships are upon us. What is the key, in your opinion, to win your fantasy football league? What do you need to do differently than you did in the regular season to make that push to get the number one place in your fantasy football league to win all the prize money or whatever you get?
Yeah, I think one of the things to do is to not change anything, really, because when you get to this point in the season, the number one thing that you run into is usually injuries. And let's go back to like last weekend. It was kind of like a bloodbath with Dalvin Cook got injured and Chris Godwin got injured. And then, the week before that, Mike Evans went down and, Juju Smith-Schuster has been out. Of course, he's not been like terribly effective this year, but this time of year, you just run into so many injuries with guys because we're just getting to that point of the year. So I think, you definitely have to play the waiver wire game more than you probably would maybe in the regular season. And, you really, if you're still playing, which is kind of the goal, you may have to go a little bit deeper, and you may win a fantasy championship this weekend with guys that you would have never dreamt, would be in your lineup. Last weekend in my semifinal matchup, I had Danny Amendola and Patrick Laird in my lineup, and if you'd asked me back in August, Patrick Laird would have definitely not even been in my back of my head. And Amendola, he was just kind of a meh piece in Detroit. So, I think it's just paying attention to who's going to have the opportunities this time of year, and playing that waiver wire game, and trying to position yourself. And honestly, Josh, a lot of this is skill, but there's a little bit of luck involved because to get to the championship, obviously you've got to you've got to do really well drafting in August, but then beyond that, you know, you got to keep picking guys up every single week, and you've got to set your, you know, your pickups, and you got to spend your fab money. So I think if you've got to the point so far, if you're in the championship, I mean, you've been doing those things. And I think the thing to do this week is to just keep doing what you've been doing and, you know, go with your projections, go with who you think is going to score you the most points, and lay your cards on the table. And if by, you know, Monday night you've got more points than the other guy, then great. And I think that's what makes fantasy football so great, is that just, you know, the unknown factor as you get so late in the season. You know, it's not really like baseball where, you know, you run into some of this stuff. I mean, football, just with injuries and you know, guys maybe sitting out games because of, you know, different reasons. I think that's what makes fantasy football so tough. And if you win a championship this weekend, I mean, you have really run the gauntlet for 16 weeks of, you know, making it all the way.
Yes, sir. And on the other end, DFS runs until the Super Bowl. What are your keys to keep that up? Are there any big prizes and stuff on DraftKings and FanDuel for playoffs and the Super Bowl, or is it just regular old DFS?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be huge prize pools all the way through the playoffs. And, I mean, playoff DFS is some of the most fun to play. You know, it's a reduced player pool, obviously, because you're not dealing with like a typical, you know, 12-game slate. But, you know, it definitely can be, you know, a fun and interesting challenge to try to create a lineup that is unique, you know, to win one of those large pools. You know, and I think even last year for the Super Bowl, you know, they have even the one-game showdown slates, which, if you've never played those, you know, I would encourage you to get on there and just, you know, you can play for as little as like 10 cents for a lineup. So, you know, it just makes it a little bit more fun to watch a game that maybe otherwise, you know, like the Super Bowl, there's very little chance that the Steelers are going to make it to the Super Bowl this year. So, you know, to help the game be a little bit more interesting and more fun for me, I mean, I'll throw a couple of lineups in and, you know, see if I can make some money that night to go along with just watching the game. So, you know, it's just a way to kind of to keep football going, because, you know, once the Super Bowl's over, I mean, we don't get football back in game form until August, which is really depressing.
Yes, very depressing indeed. Jason, I don't care what anybody says before we move on. You deserve third place. You are a great athlete in fantasy football.
Bad weekend
Cook
for me.
screwed us. Dalvin Cook screwed us.
You know, I did. You know, Godwin got hurt, Cook got hurt. I started the Rams defense. I mean, it's my own fault. The Rams defense was a horrible. I just thought they'd come out and play better. You know, then obviously those two getting hurt didn't help. But, you know, that's how it goes. You know, and you can get mad, and you know, but honestly, it's completely out of your control. And you know, luckily I still have a chance. I mean, I'm going to make money, you know, because fourth place, you know, I'm going to make money. You know, I'm just not going to make as much money as if I would have won. But, you know, I can't complain, Josh. I mean, fantasy baseball this year, I mean, you know, I had 3 first place there, so I made a lot of money there. And, you know, I'm going to make a little bit of profit off fantasy football this year, which, you know, honestly, for something we do for fun, I mean, if you can make any money whatsoever, I mean, it's a good time.
Yes, indeed, and I'll tell you my lineup for the to go to the championship game, which unfortunately I did not do. It was very interesting because I had Todd Gurley and Dalvin Cook, and I had like everybody playing at the 405 slot against each other. So it was a very interesting scenario. I was so close to making it to the championship game, but hopefully third place is in reach for me as well.
Yeah, and you know, and I think, you know, and you and I have talked pretty much the whole year about, you know, pickups and who to start, and I think that's just, I think part of whenever you lose, you know, the part that kind of sucks is that, you know, you don't really get to talk about those things anymore, and you know, you don't have those conversations, and it you know, when it comes to an end, it's kind of a bummer because we only get 16 weeks of this, you know, and you wish it would last longer. So, And that's why I say every week in football counts. And you got to enjoy it, and you got to just keep playing because you never know what can happen. I mean, I won a league last year after going 5-8 in the regular season. So you just never know what might happen if you can make the playoffs.
Yeah, you never know in fantasy football. That's what makes it so fun. So, Jason, last question for you: who do you think has performed the best in fantasy football this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I'm working on my top 25 dynasty rankings right now, and I think just positionally speaking, obviously Lamar Jackson has been a shoe-in overall QB1, which I was on him this year. I have Lamar Jackson in my main money team. I took him in I think like the 12th round, but he has been easily the most valuable and the most productive fantasy quarterback. And if you have Lamar Jackson, there's probably a good chance that you at least made the playoffs. And then as far as other quarterbacks go, and quarterback, there's just so much variance. But, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, some of the usual suspects. But the guy who really has performed well, despite the interceptions, is Jameis Winston. He leads the league in passing. And, he was essentially free on draft day. So, Lamar and Jameis, I think from a value perspective, are probably easily the two top choices at the quarterback position. And then, running back, obviously McCaffrey. The big question I think last summer, we were covering in the draft. Do you take McCaffrey or Saquon number one? If you took McCaffrey, you're thrilled. If you took Saquon, obviously it probably didn't work out. But Christian McCaffrey is a running back one and a wide receiver one packaged together. I mean he's going to have probably 110 receptions this year with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. I mean he's just really, really good. And he can just do so many things, especially in a PPR format. But I think positionally speaking at the running back position, I mean Dalvin Cook again, and I was kind of on him at the beginning of the year, but he's returned great value. For a stretch, Austin Eckler was probably the second most productive running back, not named Christian McCaffrey. And the running back position, there's just those guys get hurt so often, and we really didn't see big injuries early on. So those waiver wire pickups we didn't really see. So it was a lot of the usual suspects, kind of at the top of the leaderboard. And it wasn't until we saw some injuries and potential injuries, but even Kamara has not been that great, and Zeke is kind of underperformed. So I think the story for the running back position this year is more who didn't perform as opposed to who did, honestly. And then a lot of those guys you drafted in the first round, I mean, David Johnson, he kind of torpedoed one of my teams. I mean, it's, I think we saw kind of with the running back position how much variance there can be there. Wide receiver, Michael Thomas, best in the game, probably going to break Marvin Harrison's receptions record for the season. He's my number one overall wide receiver in any format. DeAndre Hopkins having another terrific year. Which those two guys year in, year out kind of do it. But Chris Godwin, who we talked about back in August, had just, he was easily the wide receiver one in Tampa Bay, which with Bruce Arians running the show down there, that shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, Mike Evans was super productive. And it's just one of those things, again, with wide receiver, we saw some guys that maybe we thought were going to be productive with Juju and Julio Jones, and obviously the Antonio Brown fiasco. I mean, some of those guys just really didn't put up like we thought they were going to. But, if you drafted a DeAndre Hopkins or a Michael Thomas, you've got to be happy with that in the first round. But if you were able to get a guy like Chris Godwin, in the third or fourth round, I mean, you got to be thrilled because, again, he returned second round value. And Kenny Golladay, same thing. He returned second round value. I mean, you've got to be thrilled with those results. And in the tight end position, it was such kind of a wasteland there. But you've seen George Kittle and Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz start to put together really solid performances. At the end of the year, my guess is they will probably go underdrafted next summer, and I think tight end could potentially be a position where we're able to maybe, get some of these guys on a discount. And I think there's some really good young tight ends. I mean, Darren Waller kind of burst onto the scene for the Raiders. Mark Andrews, who, again, I touted him back in the summertime. He had great rapport with Lamar Jackson last year, and it kind of carried over to this year. So I think, you've got to look at trends and see some of those things and kind of see where this is going. But there were so many strong performances this year. And the key to this whole thing is to try to, avoid the pitfalls of drafting someone like David Johnson by counterbalancing that with maybe getting someone like a Chris Godwin. So a lot of good performances this year. A lot of young guys that maybe we haven't heard of before stepping up. I mean, the rookie class was I think pretty solid. I mean, A.J. Brown in Tennessee, has turned it on recently. I mean, Hollywood Brown in Baltimore, he blew up against the Dolphins in Week 1. So, we've had some solid rookie performances too. But it's been just kind of an interesting year in fantasy football, honestly, Josh. Just because some of the guys we thought were going to be terrific maybe weren't, and we saw some new faces maybe pop up. So, and that's what makes this whole thing so much fun.
Yes, indeed. A lot of great picks, and a lot of them I actually took in my leagues based on your opinion because, Jason Kamlowski is the best. If you ever need advice from him, at Jason Kamlowski on Twitter. Before we let you go, Jason, one last preview sort of note. We do know you're part of Prospects Live doing baseball, so I'm not going to give away a lot, but hopefully we can incorporate that into later segments of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. But as of right now, you're writing prospect reports for teams in the MLB, correct?
Yeah, I just did my Orioles top 30 just dropped last week. On the site, we're pumping out top 30s, probably 2 or 3 a week. Really sharp guys on that site. We also have started Dynasty Best Ball leagues. You can sign up. Go to the Prospects Live Twitter. That's just at Prospects Live. We have a Discord channel. Right now we have 8 $50 leagues that have been filled, where we're going to do a best ball, but it's going to be Dynasty. And then we have a couple $250 leagues, I believe, that are also filled. So I think we're going to keep trying to fill up the $50 leagues right now and try to get as many of those going as we can. And basically what those are going to do, they're going to run for 5 years, and you pay the $50 up front, and that is good for all 5 years. And it's best ball, so it's basically set it and forget it, and you're just going to draft your team and let it ride. And then every year we're going to have a 10-round prospect draft as well. So it'll be a chance after 5 years we're going to crown an overall champion in these leagues. And we've had, great turnout for that. I think we've probably had over 250 people, sign up for these leagues. So that's exciting. And, as much as I love fantasy football, fantasy baseball is just so much fun. And if you're looking for something to do in the off season to kind of hold you over till football, go and play in a fantasy baseball league, because it's every day where you got to check stuff, and waiver wires run. I mean, waiver runs every day in fantasy baseball for the most part. And you don't necessarily have to see. You can get in a weekly league where you set your lineup on a Sunday and then it just rides for the week. So I would encourage anybody to play fantasy baseball, and that's kind of been probably over the last 3 years where I've really excelled and been able to be successful. But I'm hoping to. We can come on and talk about that if you want, but the website is Prospects Live. We got a bunch of sharp guys on there. Go give them a follow, and learn about the guys that are going to be playing for your favorite team here in the next couple of years.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully we can get Jason on for some more baseball talk in the near future. But in the meantime, that wraps up the year-long segment, unfortunately, of Fantasy Football Files. I have gotten a lot of positive feedback from you, Jason, on what a great job you did, and I want to personally thank you for taking the time this whole year, football year, to come on and talk fantasy football with us.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on. I mean, this is one of my favorite things to do. Every Tuesday and Wednesday was going down and getting in the lab, so to speak, and talking about start sits, and then the DFS angle, was a fun one to play. So, I just appreciate the opportunity, Josh. Anything for you. You're the best. I'm excited to watch you keep this thing growing.
Yes, sir, of course. And that wraps up the final edition of Fantasy Football Files. But don't worry, Jason is not leaving for good. Jason, hope to be talking to you soon.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir. The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast continues right after this.
The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, part of the Mayo Please podcast network, is sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you grab a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. And our new sponsor and fellow sports fans at PM Plus Reserves, providing reserve studies for homeowner and condominium associations in the Washington metropolitan area for the past 30 years. Make sure you check us out on all streaming platforms via the Mayo Please and the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also find the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, along with the Mayo Please on Twitter. Have any questions for the show? Feel free to shoot us an email at kirbyonsports@gmail.com.
All righty. Thank you once again to Jason Kamlowski, as always, for all his hard work with Fantasy Football Files. And we look forward to him bringing us some baseball content in the near future. But for the time being, Jonah Pearson is back with us, and he had a pretty fun weekend watching President's Cup action. Team USA wins, and Tiger Woods is still being the GOAT Tiger Woods. How was it? How'd it go?
It was an unbelievable President's Cup. I think that a lot of times it's easy for the President's Cup to be looked at as the off year in terms of U.S. golf. And for those that don't know, there's two different cups that the United States competes in alternating years. So on even-numbered years, and we'll have it again in 2020, the Ryder Cup is played, and it is the United States versus Europe. You get teams of 12 golfers competing. So it's United States versus all of Europe, all the different countries in Europe in the Ryder Cup. But now in odd-numbered years, like this year, it's the United States versus the rest of the world, excluding Europe. So we get guys from South Africa, other countries in Africa, Australia, Adam Scott kind of leading the charge for the Australian guys this year. Jason Day would have been in. He was out with an injury this year. And then we get a lot of Asian golfers as well, making up that international team. So the President's Cup is often less competitive just in history, United States versus the internationals, but this year was unbelievable. We got to see Tiger Woods as a captain for the first time, as well as a playing captain, which hasn't happened in a very long time. It's pretty insane that he was able to come. He went 3-0 in his matches. It's all match play. It was unbelievable to see him doing that, to be playing throughout the day, switching to coaching after right when he finishes. I mean, putting on the headset and going out there and coaching the guys who are still out. It was an unbelievable. The United States actually went down early after day one. They were down. There was 5 points to be had in day one, and they went down 4-1 in the 4-ball session of day one. And Tiger and Justin Thomas paired up. Got the only point for the United States in the first day. So it was tense after day one because it was like, I don't think the internationals have ever scored that much on the first day. Didn't look like Tiger's pairings that he picked as coach really worked out that much. And so it was kind of stressful. But then day two to come back out, and Tiger and Justin Thomas went out again, got another point, and then we had a couple key matches come in late just to square it up. So both teams took another 2.5 points in the second day, but that still left us down 6.5 to 3.5 after day two. Going into day three, there was 8 points to be won, and Tiger made an interesting decision to kind of keep himself out all of day three. In both the morning matches and the afternoon matches, he didn't put himself out there. A lot of people really questioned that, rightfully so. He went 2-0 in the first 2 days and looked great. I mean, in terms of the whole field, he looked better than anyone else. U.S. or international alike. I mean, he looked like the guy out there. So for him to choose to sit all of Saturday, which here in terms of us viewing it was Friday night because Australia is so far ahead, that's where it was held, was interesting. And he seemed like the hottest player. He kept himself out, and we ended up not really doing great on Saturday. We went down 9-5 going into the final day of just singles matches. So, or actually that was after the 4-ball, but still, I mean, it was an unbelievable President's Cup. Tiger looked incredible. There were some guys that really stepped up. Ricky Fowler was one of them. Ricky actually ended up playing all right. Tony Finau didn't look great at times, but he ended up having his singles match on the last day, which was a huge change in just momentum to come back to the U.S. And that was kind of one of the first spots where we were like, we could really win this thing. Tony Finau went out in the second match of the day, and he was at one point 4 down with 8-9 holes to play or something, and it looked like it was definitely going to be a full point for the internationals. But for him to come back and have that match was huge for the U.S. Dustin Johnson looked pretty good. Matt Kuchar sealed it with his final putt. To see a guy of his age come out and do that, qualify for the team, be out there and play as well as he did, it was awesome. It was awesome for U.S. golf, and I think it was good for international golf as well. Ernie Els was the captain for the internationals, and he had a pretty strong team. Hideki Matsuyama, Louis Oosthuizen, some guys that we've seen in multiple President's Cups, veterans of the President's Cup before, but also some young names. Abram Answer was in there, and he played phenomenal. And Tiger and him went up in the opening match on Sunday of the singles. And for Tiger to get a win there was a huge statement for the U.S. But I think it was good for both sides. It made for good TV. Because it was in Australia, it aired live in the U.S. from like 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., which was perfect for their main audience of adult white guys who are coming home after work watching golf. They all get off at 5 o'clock, and for them to be able to come home, and I mean, for it to be on in prime time was awesome in the United States. So it was a great weekend of golf for sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, Tiger Woods still looks like he has golf left in him.
Yeah, I mean, he shows no signs of stopping. Right now, he's one of the best in the world. I think the best in the world. He's got to be the number one U.S. golfer right now. Brooks Koepka looks good. He's hurt right now. We'll see what happens coming up next season. But, I mean, Tiger looks unbelievable. He looks unstoppable. I mean, and it's great. It's great for golf, and it's good to see.
Yeah, it was a very good President's Cup, and Team USA gets the win, gets to hoist that President's Cup. And, well, what's coming up next in the golf world?
Right now is a little bit of a break. Tiger kind of had a funny interview after the President's Cup talking about how he's retiring for 2019. He's not going to try and enter anything. Pretty much what's going to be next is going to be starting up some tournaments in Hawaii, because that's the only place where it's about warm enough to play at this point. And then the next year's PGA Tour season is going to get come in full force. So I think coming into the spring, there's a lot to talk about. Is Tiger going to continue and have a full dominant season like it looks like he might have? But with Brooks Koepka and Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson and Hideki Matsuyama and John Rahm and some of these guys that are coming in from overseas, there's a lot of players who look like they could dominate this year and make a run at the FedEx Cup. So there's a little bit of a break from golf. The President's Cup and the Ryder Cup in the fall and into winter is kind of typically like a last goodbye to golf for a little while. For these guys to take some time off, work on their own, work in indoor facilities, be with their families. Mm-hmm. How much traveling they do and playing, I mean, it wears a lot, not only on your body, but just on your mind and mentally in terms of your family and stuff. So these guys are going to get some time to just be off tour, be with their families for a while, enter little tournaments here and there. But, yeah, I mean, the season's right around the corner. So pretty much what's next is going to be getting into some classic tournaments to start off the PGA Tour season, and before you know it, the Masters is going to be here.
Oh, the Masters.
Yeah, and that's
always a great time, the Masters.
Always a great time, and that's really going to kick off the season.
Yeah, hopefully Mojo doesn't hit Tiger Woods taking that cap off early.
Right.
Yeah, he might not win a green jacket.
Also there's a video circling around on Twitter right now that is completely doctored and fake, and it's not accurate, of Tiger Woods taking off his hat
It looked
early.
real.
It looked real.
It
I
looked
mean,
really real.
I don't know who made it, but they did a really good job with it. He did go to take off the hat when the putt was about a foot away from the hole because he knew it was in. But it was not like disrespectful. This thing was still 15 feet away like the video makes it seem. So if you see that video, beware. It's not true.
Oh, yeah.
I know it tricked Josh.
Yep. It tricked me for sure. So moving on to our last and final segment, some breaking news. The Jacksonville Jaguars fire their executive vice president of football operations, Tom Coughlin, as of 43 minutes ago as we are recording. So that's huge for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I guess stuff in the front office wasn't getting done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this really means for the future, but Tom Coughlin will not be a part of their future.
That is interesting. I mean, coming off of a win, too. I feel like you don't see that very much. Usually when you come off a win, it means everyone's good for another week. But
I have a feeling Doug Marone might be next.
yeah. I mean, it definitely has been a disappointing year for them. Minshew Mania can only last so long. I think they're going to need more of a long-term guy in there. So we'll see, but Jacksonville's a mess.
Yep. So let's talk about Week 16. We'll preview Week 16, starting off with 3 Saturday games. And let me go on a little rant here. Why are we playing games on Saturday? For real. You can't take Saturday and Sunday to watch football. Granted, there are 3 games, but I hate this system where there are 3 Saturday games. It sucks.
Yeah, and I think some of it
And the Redskins played Saturday last year. Granted, they got knocked out of the playoffs by Tennessee.
naturally.
But still, on a Saturday, and I could barely watch any.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from a decrease in college football games on Saturday. Now that we're getting into bowl season, there's a little bit of a break. But I mean, some people really like the Saturday games. Some people like the fact that you're going to catch some NFL games on Saturday, and it lightens the load on Sunday a little bit. But there is no Thursday night game this week, so they're basically pushing one of those back, and then they move 2 games up. I mean, I don't know how I feel about Saturday games. But, I mean, I think that there are a couple good games on the schedule.
Yeah, there are.
The Texans are in need of a win against the Buccaneers. That's
Buffalo
a 1 o'clock game.
Bills and the New England Patriots.
Bills,
that's one to look out for.
That's one to look out for because that's a potential AFC championship. I mean, I know the Ravens are in there, but I mean these teams could meet in the second round, potentially, or maybe even the first round. But I mean, this is a big game. This is definitely a playoff matchup. So it'll be interesting to see how Belichick comes after that, whether or not they can blow him out of the water. It's going to be in New England. So we'll see about that. And then the 8:15 game being the Rams and 49ers. How are the 49ers going to respond to a brutal loss to a not very good Atlanta team last week at home? So I think these are all still 3 good games. But
which I will have to put all on the DVR.
There you go.
Moving to the Sunday slate of games, the Redskins are playing the Giants. I don't know how that's going to go. We lost to the Giants once before.
Perhaps the most non-influential football game of all time.
But we have to give them who's playing.
That's true.
The Falcons and the Jags.
There's another pretty boring game, but it would be good to see Atlanta get a win there at home.
Baltimore and Cleveland, Carolina and Indianapolis, Cincinnati and Miami, Pittsburgh and the New York Jets, New Orleans and Tennessee, Detroit and Denver to start your 4:05 slate, Oakland at the Chargers, in the 4:25 game, Dallas and Philly, 4:25 Arizona, Seattle, 8:20 the Chiefs and the Bears. Sunday night predictor, I'm going Chiefs heavy for that one. And Monday night, Green Bay and Minnesota. Games you want to look out for: Green Bay and Minnesota, Dallas and Philly, Houston and Tampa Bay, Buffalo, New England, and Los Angeles and San Francisco. Your thoughts on Week 16 action, Jonah?
Yeah, I think there are still a lot of games in here. There's a couple mixed in that really don't have any playoff implications, but it's still football and it's still fun to watch. Come the middle of March, everyone's really going to miss that. So these are still good games, but I think in that 1 o'clock slate, Like you said, a really huge game to look out for there would be the Saints and the Titans. The Titans are in need of a win there, and the Saints are looking to just shut them out and lock in some home field. So that's a pretty big game. Steelers and Jets. Steelers need a win. They need a bounce back win after what happened on Sunday night, and if they don't, they could potentially be losing that wild card spot to the Titans with the Titans win. So we'll see what happens there. The 4 o'clock slot, that Cowboys-Eagles game, definitely game of the week. That's huge. You got to think that's going to be who wins the division right there, with them both going to play either the Giants or the Redskins next week. So I would say I think the Cowboys get it done on the road. I think they've been a little bit more consistent. They looked very good last week. So we'll see, but that's a big 4 o'clock game. And then the Chiefs and the Bears on Sunday night. Bears are out of it at this point, but the Chiefs, there's been some question marks with them. Patrick Mahomes has looked a little bit less electric than he did last year at this time. So I think that the Bears are definitely going to try and protect their home turf as well as they can. And so for Patrick Mahomes to be back in primetime spotlight, that would be a big statement win. And not only if they could win that game, but if they could win it commandingly, I think that sets them up well for the playoffs. And then Packers-Vikings might be, in my mind, one of the best games of the week. I mean, this has the feel of the Bills and Patriots on Saturday. That's kind of the same thing. This is a potential NFC playoff matchup, so that'll be a really good game as well.
Yep, it's heating up. Only 2 more weeks left in the regular season. Josh Kirby on Sports will continue to bring you more news from NFL and so much more, but that is all the time we have on this episode. Jonah, thanks once again for coming on to talk golf. Very interested to hear about the President's Cup. It was really fun to hear you and the rest of the sports talk. It was fun, brother. Any last words?
No, thanks, man. I really appreciate being here. I have a lot of fun doing it, so I'm just glad I was able to be on.
Yes, sir, anytime. So that wraps it up for this week's. We're on the fence on if we want to record on Christmas Eve or not. If we do not, I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will catch you soon. You can check us out on all social media platforms and all streaming platforms. As always, thanks to MPT Now Productions, JR Beats Official, and Dave Johnson for everything they do. And we are sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores, and by PM Plus. For Jonah Pearson, I'm Josh Kirby. Till next time, so long and peace out.